Hello, everybody. This time I'm just doing it while I'm pulling out of the house, right? I have been very hesitant about doing my whole drive because, people on the YouTubes and stuff. And I'm like, F it now, because I'm moving soon. This ain't going to be my neighborhood in very long, so why not do the whole drive? I'm going out on this rainy Saturday morning on May 21st, 2022 to do some grocery shopping before the gang's even awake. They'll wake up to a nice, well-supplied house. I tend to let it run a little bit lower. I don't do the more frequent, smaller grocery trips. I do the less frequent, larger ones. It makes it a little bit more of a project and less of just a thing. So it goes against my current thinking, where nothing is a project and everything is just a little thing. So that every little thing gets done, ELT, every little thing, capital ELT, it's ironic, right? Every little thing, lowercase GD, gets done, so that it has this grouped letter appearance that comes across as felt good. ELT GD, felt good. And this morning I looked around. It works well with my various mantras and logos in life and stuff. So of course anyone who tunes in knows at the top of my journal is the world is your checklist. Look around. So people like me who have a little bit of that touch of pedantic what to do's, checklists a lot. My dad was all about the checklist. He had these little 4x6 tablets of paper, not lines or anything, and not like a spiral bound or anything, but just blank white paper that peel off. And each day he'd make a little list of things to do. He got nowhere in life. Died a slave to a business that he had to buy to help pay off my college and stuff like that. So I'm not a real fan. He, by the way, was one of those New York textile Jews that Malcolm Gladwell talks about in Outliers, who was coerced into the business by his uncles because it's what a good Jew does, because they can't get work in other businesses. And he wanted to be an aeronautical engineer. He wanted to build rocket ships. He was a lot like me. He told me about Isaac Asimov early in my life, and I didn't really pursue it. I became a fantasy person, reading Tolkien and Thomas Covenant. And I had a little bit of regrets because my dad was trying to guide me more into the science-y type fantasy. And I discovered Asimov later, and it was as significant as he made out. And I'm also discovering other sci-fi writers that are just as attached to my lineage. Lou Lemons, I gotta get his name right, but that Polish sci-fi writer that does a lot of seminal sci-fi, like, what if we encountered, highly evolved machine beings that lived on a different time scale? Would they even recognize us? It's like we might look like ants to a sufficiently advanced civilization. The first guy who wrote popularly along those lines. His stuff has been translated into a lot of languages. I guess I'll be reading it in English, just, for the same reason as the other day I talked about, original language reading is an issue. You can't read Dante's Inferno in English and get the point of this epic poem. And you can't read the Bible in anything but its original Hebrew and Aramaic and understand what the original, word of God from Moses was. Sun Tzu has similar issues, and you can go through the list. So anyway, all tools are imperfect, but we must use tools, so we accept the love-worthy bits of the imperfect tools. And if you want access to that, if you want access to the Bible and Sun Tzu and Machiavelli and all this wonderful writing from history, all Greek myths and stuff. You gotta accept the translations. Can't read Gilgamesh in Sanskrit. So. Small things. I looked around this morning, and the thing I saw was my ML SEO package was still being hosted on a github.io website, github.io/ my username there, Mick11, always MIKLEVIN in almost all places. And then I guess another / for the repo name, /MLSEO. So that's totally unacceptable. And I'm already using MikeLevinSEO.com for one of these slice and dice blog sites. I considered using that for the repo itself, for the documentation page generated by NBDev for the repo. So for anyone just joining in, one of the things I do is I create Python packages, pip installable packages. So if you're on Python, you know about this whole pip install pandas, pip install requests. When you need a big library that isn't on your machine yet, Python has now formalized its repository system. It's a fairly new development. Pip used to be external to the whole Python standard distribution. When you downloaded Python at python.org, there was no pip included. Even today, there's a little bit of separateness issues that they're still resolving, but it wasn't baked in. But now it's been formalized and it's baked in. So you install, Python 3.10 or whatever from python.org, and you can pip install software right away from a command line, from a terminal. There's issues, sometimes you're in Jupyter Notebook and don't have the permissions to do everything you need. Sometimes you're in Windows and the paths are, irrevocably foobarred. And virtual environments help a little bit, but virtual environments are not easy under Windows, I'll tell you. So anyway, I make pip installable packages, and one of them is ML SEO, like Levin SEO, machine learning SEO. It's got a lot of good connotations. It's not really at the machine learning part yet, but it will be. And it was hosted on, and the documentation for it, I make it in a Jupyter Notebook in Jupyter Lab. So it's Jupyter Lab Desktop Edition, installable at GitHub. I believe it's github.com/Jupyter/Jupyter-desktop. Very hard to find. Googling can turn it up. Then you have to look over at the right-hand side at releases. I made a long blog post about the problems they're still resolving. Jupyter is right on the verge of changing the world, right? The Project Jupyter is changing the world. It's changing the world, much the way Python itself did. So the most accessible, the most successible, and the most accessible programming language in the world, the one that's so good that it replaced Lisp as the Comp Sci 101 language in the university where Lisp was invented, MIT. That is the power of Python. It can win over the unwinnables. It's that good. So it's why it's standing toe-to-toe and still continuing to gain popularity with and in the face of JavaScript, even though JavaScript is the one language to rule them all because of the full web stack. Yeah, full web stack is only going to be about as long-lived as the current state of browsers and web platforms, which is about the same as the ye old state of laser printers. Laser printers ruled the world there for a while too as the master output format of computers. And PostScript was the language. It was a proprietary language owned by Adobe. It's become, I believe, free and open source since, but too little too late. You would go, oh, well, JavaScript isn't going that route. Well, it's the embedded I/O language of a human interface, just the way laser printers are, that's tied to the platform du jour, web browsers, just the way PostScript was in laser printers. Same thing. It is a perishable, stateful thing. Python is not. Python is fundamental. Python is taking over the role once played by Perl, the Perl programming language, the pathologically eclectic, rambling Lister language that got built into Linux because it was better than Bash script or Unix script or whatever you want to call it. The things ending with a .sh file generally are what we're talking about, which is what install scripts and Linux maintenance and Unix maintenance stuff was written in, but it was completely inadequate. It was, self-flagellation to write complex things in Bash script. So another language is always needed on Linux for that general system administration, maintenance stuff. And that language for many years was Perl, which is why the original LAMP platform was primarily Linux, Apache, MyPHP, and Perl, because whatever language is shipped with Linux is the P in the pool of tech. It's in and it's never coming out. Perl's never coming out. However, it is being replaced because, progress, improvements, inching towards perfection. Well, during that progress and inching towards perfection, Python has clearly emerged as the new P language of Linux general administration. Amazon knows it with their Bodo library to manage all services Amazon. Google knows it by having created Google on Python itself first. Their Go language that they had to tap the inventor of Unix to write is very much based on how Python works. So many of the same concepts in the Go language as Python. When you hear it described, they're going to say it's very Python-like, among other things, but first thing out of their mouth is it's very Python-like. So if you're copying Python, okay, so Google knows. And, some of the biggest libraries out there for machine learning are coming from Facebook, PyTorch, so Facebook knows. The Tornado asynchronous library, also another very popular Python library from out of Facebook. Not that Facebook's all that rah-rah either. So what about Microsoft? Does Microsoft know? Well, they hired the creator of Python. Guido van Rossum is working for Microsoft, so of course they know. And they're embedding all kinds of optimizations in, and they're, basing their VS Code editor around the Jupyter, the IPython and Jupyter Notebook concepts, right? They have the Jupyter capabilities built into VS Code, lifted out of Jupyter, dropped into VS Code. So in their core products, Microsoft knows. So, Python is the new P in the pool of tech. Sorry, JavaScript. What else can I say? I don't know. There's just so much to say there, but where did I start out? The little things. So, the little things. Little things become easy when you can express yourself in languages that have committed themselves to muscle memory over time. That would be Linux, Python, and Vim, and Git for reasons I discussed ad nauseum in other videos. So, ML-SEO, it got to be time to host it somewhere. Couldn't use MikeLevinSEO.com because it's a blog site. It's a blog slice and dice site. When I write journal entries that don't belong on MikeLev.in or Mike@11.com, they belong on MikeLevinSEO.com. Either rambling open-endedly, which is MikeLev.in, or talking to my child, which is Mike@11.com, or talking professionally, talking tech, talking the industry of SEO. So I decided to see if I could host a GitHub page on a subdomain, mlseo.mikelevinseo.com. Worked like a charm. And I'm just now waiting for the security certificate to be issued by GitHub so that I can enforce HTTPS. And voila, Mike Levin SEO. MikeLevin.com. MLSEO.MikeLevinSEO.com. MLSEO.MikeLevinSEO.com. I got to get used to saying it, which is fine. Takes a while. Everything takes a while, but if you deconstruct it from projects or never really let it get built up into projects in the first place, it's not a project. You just sit down and you chip away. You do the next thing that logically needs to be done, which for me today was to get MLSEO documentation created by NBDev from a package created in a Jupyter notebook to be hosted. The index.ipynb gets converted into the readme.markdown that gets put at the bottom of the GitHub repository for McLevin/MLSEO, github.com/McLevin/MLSEO. That same readme.markdown becomes the web page at MikeLevinSEO.com. So now it's a website on the subdomain. It was a little thing. Just knocked it out this morning before I came off to do my grocery shopping. Thanks for joining me. Hope to see you again soon. And don't forget to subscribe.